it's always really nice to have people talk about their journey too. So cool.
Great. It's, yeah, you're good.
Good. Okay. Kia ora koutou, Kim Cho, annyeonghaseyo, and happy Diwali today. Thank you all for joining us on our third Community Voices webinar. We have another awesome group of panelists today, guests who will be sharing with us around their journey on Te Tiriti or Waitangi. Before we kick off today, I'll just do a brief mihi. Nau mai whakatau mai kia tātou katoa huri noa I te motu. Ko tai mai I tēnei wā ki te whakarongo ki ngā reo o tātou hei whakamana I ngā whakaro o te tahonohono. Kia koutou katoa I muria mai I te kai a te rangatira ki ko te kōrero kei te mihi. So, lovely to join with us today, that we have Neelum, Rebekah and Andrea. Before we introduce our panelists, I'll just have a brief introduction about what we do here in Inclusive Aotearoa Collective Tāwhānau. So we are an independent collective working group. For those of us who don't know what we do at Inclusive Aotearoa Collective Tāwhānau, we're an independent collective working towards creating a national strategy for belonging and inclusion. So our vision of an Aotearoa New Zealand where everyone has a place to belong. In 2020, we asked the people of Aotearoa what belonging means to them and what stops them from feeling belonging, from feeling that they belong. Through this research, we identified three main areas that we have broken into constellations. So one of them is having the important conversation, addressing discrimination and racist practices. Another is Te Totoke Roto, a treaty that resonates with us all. And also engaging with media around how media can better portray those of Māori, those of marginalized communities on writing narratives that is more befitting to these community groups. So you can learn a bit more about us on our website, www.inclusiveaotearoa.nz. But I'll just do a little brief introduction before I pass it on to our beautiful panelists today. So, ko Shiba Jensan toku maunga, ko Taiwana toku moana, ko Kuya toku awa, ko no Taiwana ahau, ko Shingzu toku rohe, ko Whananaki toku whatu manawa, ko Tamaki Makaurau me Papaoia e noho ana, ko Aram toku ingoa. So just a little bit about myself in English is my mountain is called Shiba Jensan and my moana is the Taiwan Strait. I am from Taiwan and my family is from the region Shingzu. But my heart also belongs to a place called Whananaki up in the far north. So that's where I go and visit all the time and I've got whānau there. And I both reside in Auckland and Palmerston North. And my name's Aram. So kia ora. And yeah, I'd like if we could have our panelists just do a bit of introduction of themselves and what they do. Yeah, so would you like to start, Neelum?
Yeah, kia ora. So I am Pōnaki, born and bred of Indian whakapapa in Gujarat. I would call myself a Towi of colour. At home at the moment, the last few years I've been stepping into my role as a professional auntie, I like to say. One of the most important roles of all, of my life anyway. I work with my friends at a collective called Tātou Tātou as a design researcher and evaluator, something I really love doing. And I'm on what I like to say the forever journey of decolonisation, trying to claim back many parts of my whakapapa, which I've unfortunately rejected over the years. So yeah, and I get a lot of inspiration from tangata whenua, tangata moana in that space, I think. they are absolutely leading the way in how we reclaim our indigeneity. So yeah, kia ora.
Kia ora. Rebekah?
Kia ora koutou katoa. My name's Rebekah. I'm based in Tamaki Makaurau, and I'm Korean. So during the daytime, I'm a public health medicine trainee in the Auckland region, but I also do some community organising work in the local Korean community with a group called Korean New Zealanders for a Better Future. And I also kind of dabble in research, mostly around the impact of racism in health.
Oh, kia ora, ngā mihi kia koe. And Andrea?
Kia ora koutou. My name is Andrea Gardner. I am an organisational psychologist by trade, which means I work with any sized organisation on a number of people-related issues, and I have no specific piece of work that related to inclusivity, although a number of the jobs and projects that I get involved in actually do touch on inclusion in the workplace and diversity in the workplace. But the reason I'm here today is more to talk about probably my personal journey. And I live in a beautiful sort of semi-rural place called Ohoka in North Canterbury, so which is just about 20 minutes out of Christchurch.
Awesome, mean. So following on from last week's community voices, we had people who are in the Te Tiriti or Waitangi educational spaces. But today, and through that, we wanted to recognise that Te Tiriti or Waitangi holds a real potential binder of all of us as New Zealanders of all ethnicities, and how powerful and positive that this can be promoted through our country all throughout. And part of that is also the journeys that individual people like yourselves have been on in terms of where you've started and how that conscientization happened as well. So what are the turning points for you? At what point did you realize that the importance of Te Tiriti or Waitangi for yourself? And jump in, anyone who wants to start.
Okay. Okay, I'll do it. I don't know if there was a particular time that was a turning point for me, but it was a realization that I came to, I suppose, through learning about New Zealand history at a very young age, and I started to feel like, as a New Zealand of European descent, I suppose, I started to feel like I was a little bit embarrassed about what my ancestors had been up to, and there are a number of inequities and unfairness and what had gone before. So it wasn't specifically related to the treaty. It was my own just trying to rationalise history and what had happened and where I saw myself fitting into that.
Awesome. And yeah, I think, this question could also be brought into at what point as well, regardless through Te Tiriti or even kaupapa Māori as well, that you've supported along the way. I'll pass it on to...
For me, like similar to, oh, sorry. Can
No. I was actually going to pass it on to you anyways, Rebekah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Similar to what Neelum said in her introduction, kind of for Tauiwi of colour in Aotearoa, it's almost like we exist in a historical vacuum, and there's a lot of things to unpack before we get to a place of realising our relationship within a Te Tiriti framework. And I think for me, slowly learning about my own history Korean history, our experiences with colonization and imperialism kind of was a gateway, because once you start applying that same critical lens about colonization and imperialism to where we currently live, the fact that we live in a settler colonial state and all the injustices that exist in our day-to-day lives became clearer and clearer. And from then, it's kind of just like learning from people who were a bit ahead of me in the journey, which is something that continues to this day. And I think as a non-Māori person, the first step for me in terms of people who I learnt from would be Pākehā women like Catherine Delahunty, Heather Kane, Jen Margaret, who are treaty educators who kind of do a really good job of introducing people to what our responsibility should be as the non-Māori partner in a treaty relationship.
And I think what you've just mentioned and touched on, and maybe also Neelum, that you could elaborate too from our kōrero in the past, is part of what you've just said is going on that journey to learn about yourself too, around what's relevant, the relevancy of who you are, and the connection to this land. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Tautoko what Rebekah said. I would say the journey, to understand the importance, has been a gradual journey. I really didn't learn about it at school, as many people didn't. Maybe we did. I hear mixed messages all the time. So I think that although it has placed a responsibility on ourselves to learn it, it means we get to learn it how we want to, right? Which is epic. So we get to pick who we get to listen to, which for me means that I've learned a lot from kaupapa Māori researchers in that space that are just incredible. I also really like to touch on the point about our shared history of colonisation, especially as Tauiwi of colour, because a lot of us do come from lands that have been colonised, and it is an entry point to learning about this stuff. And we have a really special place in Aotearoa where we get to learn our own history and get to reclaim that, but we also being manaaked onto this land and through Te Tiriti means that we get to learn that journey as well, and we get to see the similarities, we get to see the acts of resistance that all our cultures have had, and we get to share the hope for the future. So yeah, I'd say it's been a gradual journey, but yeah, it's a good one.
Oh, thank you all. And with being on this journey as well, and it's a continual learning process, I'm constantly learning all the time from the people around me who inspire me, but also put a lot of faith into me with the knowledge that they impart. I guess with some of this knowledge, and I know that for each and one of us who've been on this journey, through the consciousness of this, of learning Te Tiriti o Waitangi, how have you been able to action it in your everyday life, through your personal life and also through your professional or community life as well? Would you like to start, Andrea?
Oh, I thought we might take turns, but yes, that's that's fine. The biggest part of my journey was probably when I was, I suppose, immersed in a lot of te ao Māori through a particular piece of work that I was involved in, and I learned a lot through there about tikanga, pronunciation, customs, protocols, mihi, poraporoaki, a number of and just koha, practices really about culture. And it's a number of those that I have taken and that now are fairly standard for how I go about a lot of my work and my interactions, which, you know, in a place like Christchurch is sometimes quite unfamiliar to a number of people. But, you know, I'm able to engage with my daughter really well. There's a very strong, you know, Māori culture and set of learnings at her school, and her pronunciation is fabulous and her love of waiata. And, you know, so it's not just in my professional life, but in my personal life that I know a lot of the waiata that she comes home with, and we'll often just sort of sing them together and that sort of thing. And, you know, that's, so to me, it's a very gradual thing, but it's an understanding that I have that I find really creates a lot of warmth in me because I understand it and appreciate it.
Kia ora, Andrea. And I think that's so awesome, you know, just going on that journey with our tamariki, you know, they're not just going by themselves, but we're actually part of that journey and learning it with them as well. Yeah. Thank you for that. I'll pass it on to you, Neelum.
Yeah. I think have incorporated the learning of Te Tiriti Waitangi. I think we're really lucky having really shared values as tauiwi of colour, te tangata whenua, and it makes it it just makes it really easy to incorporate Te Tiriti into how we live and how we work and everything like that. So that's one of the really cool things about being tauiwi of colour. But also, so one of the things in my personal life would be like how we manaaki each other and how we treat each other. I learned a lot about how to manaaki people and do it well from my friends. They just do it the best. And I think it's one of the really cool things. We do it in our own culture, Indian culture as well, and many other cultures. So that's one of those like shared values and those things that we can really learn from Te Tiriti that you actually do every day, most people, which is one of the really cool things. I think in a professional sense, it can be quite hard sometimes. It's really hard when you're up against it. When you're in really white spaces, it can be difficult. But what it looks like for me is really advocating hard and like never stopping. And just even when you think no one's listening, you just keep going. And I think that allyship is so important in the professional space, particularly in like government spaces where we really need that structural change to happen. That advocacy is huge. Also just trying to be that person that's brave. And sometimes it's also just being able to take the some of the like hits instead of other people constantly doing it. It's doing some of that stuff as well. I quite like to look at some of the easiest ways I've seen in the professional space a really effective way is like actually having questions like, what are we doing? Is it going to benefit Māori? Is it going to benefit Pacifica? Is it going to benefit other marginalised groups? Like, what is this project doing? So it's one of the key questions I always ask myself, who is this benefiting? And if it's not, then I don't think we should be doing it. We need to share the power. So that in my mahi, that's like one of the key things I look at. Yeah, so yeah, that's me.
Oh, thank you so much, Neelum. And it's so important, you know, what you touched about on allyship, you know, how to be effective allies that will put the actions and, dare I say, be a bit of a troublemaker at organizations sometimes. You know, some of us are not accustomed to it. But again, at the end of the day, it's also about the safety and protection of other people who constantly are barraged with just onslaughts of having to be defending their position all the time to be who they are. So that's really great. You know, that's always a really cool key action point of supporting, advocating for those around us, especially in our workplace spaces as well. So thank you for that, Neelum. Rebekah, did you have any thoughts to add on to that and your journey as well?
Yeah, it's nice to go third because you kind of can build on what everyone else has said. And oh gosh, it's been so nice to just listen while also thinking about what that question means to me, because it's quite a big question, isn't it? I think one thing that I kind of try to think about all the time is like the idea of being mana enhancing. I think especially if we're in activist sort of roles and spaces a lot, it's easy to kind of get trapped in just being critical and oppositional. But I think what I've learned from the idea of being mana enhancing and from seeing how it can be done through like Māori thinkers and you know, the Professor Linda Smith and Dr. Mona Jackson, kind of like how to think in a way that isn't just oppositional, but like is creative and expansive and world building. So kind of it teaches me to think in a way that's more hopeful, even when you're in a really difficult and upsetting situation. I think for me in my like community organizing work, it has meant that I try to think about how what we're doing isn't just limited to our like little ethnic community enclave, but also thinks about how we're here as treaty partners as well, and what it means to be like a guest or a newcomer on the land in relationship with mana whenua, not the dominant ethnic group. And I think professionally, one thing I have, you know, been able to develop over time is like my understanding of what research is helpful versus harmful. A recent example is when I was kind of sent a draft of a research report, and it was very like kind of biological deficit framed, and I'm trying to kind of come up with like reasons why Māori have worse outcomes than non-Māori based on some sort of like genetic or biological disposition. And even though I wasn't like a senior member of the group of people working on that project, I was able to say, I mean, this doesn't look acceptable to me. These are some changes you could think about, but in this state, I don't think it should, you know, go out into the world. And the knowledge and courage and insight to be able to say that comes from being on this journey and learning from the people I've learned from.
Great, thank you so much for that. And yeah, it is it takes a lot of courage, and it takes a lot of strength to be that voice sometimes, to be that voice of, hey, I don't think that's a great idea, you know, because as you know, both Neelum, yourself, and Rebekah, being from a marginalized community as well, you sometimes already had a spotlight on you at times, right? And then going out to advocate, you know, for others, sometimes that's even putting more spotlight, which can be quite a big thing. So yeah, I think having that courage is really important. So thank you both for just sharing you know, your processes. I guess one other thing that I wanted to also ask is whilst you've been going on that journey for yourself, what have been some of the things that you have done in your own family or communities to kind of get them on that pathway as well, which I know for some of us, it can be hard because our families, especially in some of our, you know, for example, you know, my background in terms of more Chinese backgrounds is sometimes, you know, our media stream doesn't always portray a very positive light around Te Tiriti or aspects of Māori, and it's very deficit based and negative based as well, that, you know, as young people that I see is constantly countering our elders as well in those narratives. So you know, if you all of you as well, I know this could be a really, you know, tough subject at times, and how have you found any ways of navigating through that? Shall we start off with you, Neelum?
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, it's a really tough discussion to have. It's really tough when you're at different understanding levels and having to meet everyone at the right level so you don't like turn people off, I guess. One of the things I did with a friend is that we made a zine for third culture kids of Indian origin, and it touched on Te Tiriti, he whakaputanga, and then mental health, and it kind of bridged all these gaps between Aotearoa and our history in India and what's happening. And the reason we did that was because to start those conversations, because you can use this as a bit of information, maybe get a bit of knowledge from it. It also really showed intersectionality between all the different impacts of colonization, as well as, and how it affects people here and back there. And it was just a conversation starter. So that's one way I think you can do that in communities where if you don't want to be the front-facing speaking thing to do, you can start a zine or just give out pamphlets or something like that. And I think it's been a really amazing generational gap-filling type of activity where you get the older people that really love it and can relate to a lot of it, as well as the younger people. So that's one of the coolest things I think you can do when you really don't know what to do, as well as it's really opened doors in our whānau as well to having conversations with my parents around these things, because there's something to reference. Like, you're not just coming in cold anymore. So that's something.
Thank you so much, Neelum. Rebekah?
Yeah, just really echoing what Neelum said. Like, I think to change minds and kind of perceptions in our families and communities, it's never just like one act, it's like 100 conversations to change someone's mind. So I think that's kind of the day-to-day work that we have to do. Some like moments that I can think of that I've been really I was really touched by would include during our like Asian community visit to Hiumatao, a couple of our Korean community group attended, including a journalist. So like once they were there, like on the land and like feeling the atmosphere, like there wasn't really that much to explain, because that history of like experiencing occupation and that sort of violence is like really familiar to us. So like as soon as they saw it and were there, they understood, and that means that they could report from that perspective rather than like translating something from the New Zealand Herald. And I think that's such an important way of getting a different perspective on what can be like a really misreported event or a dynamic. And we have these ongoing conversations about how we should be translating Te Reo into Korean. So like tauranga, tauranga, those sorts of things. And so it's like really small, but I think like a collection of those really small things can have a seismic shift. So yeah, and like this is something that I feel like I and anyone else with this awareness has an obligation to do as much as we can.
Thank you so much for that, Rebekah. And it was really great connecting with you through that time as well, getting people on site, and again, just having that connection, and also whakawhanaungatanga around, again, what you've said and highlighted is that a lot of our communities, this is actually quite there on the surface already, that we connect very quickly to as well. So thank you for your work, and bring your communities to this. And we'll move on to Andrea.
The experience that I talked about before was quite life-changing for me, and I was really fortunate to have a fabulous mentor, if you like, in the form of Kiriana Tawhawhirangi. And I think what she did with me is what I think would work with a lot of other people to enhance inclusion. And what really worked was education in a safe way. You know, a number of people are fearful of what they don't know or don't understand, and they're nervous of being told off. Yet over a period of years, I learned so much. And, you know, if I got something wrong, if there was a practice wrong, you know, I remember putting a bag on a table and being gently corrected, you know, and learning from that. So now I gently correct other people and educate them in that. But what I find also works is drawing parallels and helping to explain in familiar terms what certain concepts and principles and philosophies are. You know, sort of if we're thinking of, you know, guardianship of the land, if we're thinking of taking a longer term perspective, if we're drawing parallels amongst different cultures, as I think Neelum was talking about before, you know, things that make something unfamiliar more familiar really help. So my advice is to educate, you know, as Rebekah said, not in an oppositional way so much, but, you know, we do need to be brave, but what seems to work is that sort of relentless explanation and education in a safe way. So I would say be supportive, be brave, but be unapologetic as well.
Oh, thank you for that. And you've hit it on the nail for my next question, just around how you would recommend other people who might be wanting to start this journey or have been on this, you know, the beginning of this journey, whether or not new migrants or people that's been here for quite some time, around where would be the starting point to gain some more knowledge and awareness of Te Tiriti, but also how to action as well through this piece of document, and also through your work through Kaupapa Māori as well. How has that been for you? And we'll start with Rebekah.
I guess like what works best in terms of like learning is different for everyone. Like I'm a bit of a nerd, so like reading books and things seems to be what's like worked best for me. One thing that I kind of turn to again and again for people from like an Asian background who ask me about how to navigate this treaty relationship is the essay by Siming Mok, Race You There, Landfall 2004. I think I've probably got the link saved somewhere, but like the way that Siming talks about like when we decide that our place in New Zealand is from entry through treaty, then no one can question our place here. And like to me, that was like a light bulb moment. And I think it just explains so clearly like who determines our legitimacy here. And that's like the beginning of like a relationship. Yeah, and there's like so much kind of good stuff out there. One thing that kind of helped me as well was the Bastion Point documentary by Nana Tamita. Like kind of when you see like that colonial violence with your own eyes, it's really hard to deny it. So like, you know, it depends on what works for you, but there's so much out there, and like once you start finding it, there'll be will keep leading on to more things. And I think like if you're in the position where you're kind of guiding or teaching someone, I always think about how patient people have been with me, and that kind of gentleness and patience and like gentle, I can't remember the wording you used, Andrea, but yeah, like gentle teaching, gentle guidance, and acknowledging that for someone to like flip that switch and start making that journey is such a big deal, I think is the right kind of space to be in to have this conversation.
I just want to touch on something that Rebekah just said, which was about like that light bulb moment they had, and it was about one of the light bulb moments, because that belonging thing is such a big thing, and I had an experience where like I just had like a kind of a crisis, which is like I don't feel like I belonged here for so long, and it's that dominant narrative which really did that over a number of years of reading like really harmful, just feeling harmful stuff, and that light bulb moment came when understanding that Te Tiriti is our document, and the document we Tawiwa of colour get to be here with. And it was a huge moment, because it means that we're flipping that narrative from that you don't belong here to no, you absolutely belong here and you are welcome here. So I think that, yeah, that was a huge moment for me in my early 20s to understand that. So yeah, I just want to tautoko what Rebekah said.
Thank you, Neelum. And did you have anything more to add on to at what point as well would your recommendation come as well, you know, going on that journey if people wanted to find out more around Te Tiriti?
Yeah, I would, sometimes it's just watching stuff together with other people that are kind of new to the journey and discussing it. We did one of those type things that are Asian Support and Te Rangatiratanga potluck, social potluck we did a few months ago, and we had a potluck and then watched Dr. Moana Jackson talk at Unity Books. So sometimes it's that, sometimes it's just sending links to people and discussing it. Yeah, it's just always planting those seeds, as others have said in this chat. Yeah, planting those little things, and as Rebekah said, it will end up in the seismic shift, but however you plant those seeds, you can do it in a million ways. You can do it when you're out surfing, talking to your friends. You can do it when you're on a run. You can do it sitting there, like you can do it in a nightclub, but keep planting them. And yeah.
Kia ora. Thank you for that. Andrea, what's your whakaaro?
This is probably what I've already said, I suppose, and just grabbing those opportunities to learn and to ask for advice and sort of immerse yourself in it and understand. And if I go back to the earlier example about learning from our children as well, I mean, what our children are growing up with is just incredible. And also what I'm seeing in workplaces now is so much more inclusive. I think the future is actually really exciting, and sometimes when I find myself being a bit more direct to some people, what I'm saying is ignore it at your peril, because you're going to be left behind. You know, your children get it well and truly. You know, just get on that journey with them.
Oh, thank you for that. And I think, you know, from what everyone has spoken as well, you know, going on that learning around Te Tiriti or Waitangi isn't just about learning a piece of document, but it's also about the openings of relationships, the opening of culture, the opening and understanding of a language, and the values that come with it as well. You know, the idea, the concept of manaakitanga, of sharing and caring for one another, the concept of whanaungtanga, you know, getting to know each other, building relationships, and, you know, what a beautiful journey that's on, that people are on, and, you know, how much people, and also tangata whenua, have shown us as well in that beautiful care. And that's what I'm hearing from people as well, is that the beautiful care that people have been under by so many people that have guided your journey as well. From like the likes of Kiriana to other people in your life, Neelum, and also Rebekah as well, that have actually just, you know, paved our journey and our way, but took us under their wings in a really caring way, through the concept of Māori values, which is really, really beautiful. We've got some questions from the audience, actually. So one question is, how do people navigate the generational complexity of being an ally to Māori when many are dealing with their own colonization or still experiencing recent harm? So I'll just put that in the chat so that everyone can see. There we are.
I can start.
Okay.
Yeah. When I first read this, I thought it's a really tough place to be. Like, we do, a lot of our families and stuff do have a lot of trauma, generational trauma that we are working through. I kind of see it as a way, how I viewed it in my own family is that I've finally been the one that can be an ally to Māori. My parents may be still dealing with stuff, but I don't have as much of that burden. So I am able to, I guess, be a better ally and really do some of this work and this unlearning work and decolonization work. It's still, I like my parents as well. They still are so willing to learn and stuff. So it's about also giving them, like, talking to them about things pertaining to Te Tiriti or other things going on, like ikumātao, letting them know what's going on, because they want to know. They may not be able to do it at the level that I am, but that's kind of one way you can bridge it, if that's kind of answers the question. I'm not really sure, but it's a tough one. It's not easy, but yeah.
And I think something that you've shared with me recently is just, can you just share a little bit around, you know, the generations that your family have been here, and through that, what are some of those experiences that you're talking about right now?
Yeah. So my great granddad migrated here 100 years ago, and I guess with that, we heard many stories in our reunion this year about how tough it was back then and the things that to deal with opening their shop and people not wanting to go to it because it was owned by Indians and that. But so that harm has come through a lot. But in terms of what I said just before, it means that, like, I wasn't directly affected by that. I was indirectly through how it's traveled through, but it means that I get to be the one to be hopeful and get to learn all the things and get to resist other things. And it means that I'm really lucky. I get to do all the fun stuff. I don't actually have to deal with that. So I guess that's how I view my own journey, is that it's a real privilege to have this journey. And it's one that you have a lot of responsibility to, and to tangata whenua and to everyone else in Aotearoa to do a good job of it so we can have an inclusive Aotearoa for the future. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
I think one thing I've really learned from like Māori and other Indigenous thinkers is that, like, the history of colonization isn't just one of, like, passively experiencing harm. It's a history of, like, strength and resistance and, like, trying to imagine something different. And one of those things is, like, kind of not passing on that generational trauma to future generations. And I think, like, that's kind of a practice that I try to implement in my own life. So, like, yes, we're all often talking about really heavy things and about harm, but it doesn't mean that we have to just, like, allow it to hurt us. And there's different ways of taking on that burden or history. And I think that's a conversation that we can have with our own communities as well. But, like, that really has to come from having already established a trusting relationship. So yeah, I think, like, the work, whatever it is, like, it is, like, with each other as much as in, like, partnership or allyship with Māori.
And I think both you and Neelum have put it so beautifully, is that, you know, we are at an age where we have so much more information, and whatever that word is, the severing of, you know, our trauma with our ancestors' traumas, our grandparents' trauma, our great grandparents' trauma. Yes, it's still there. However, we also have the ability to choose to do something with it as well. But also, whilst doing something with it, is also helping those in our whānau in that journey as well. So thank you both for that. And it takes a lot of conscious effort to be able to do so too. To have people around us to guide us, to shape us. So we'll move on to Andrea. Hea tō whakaaro.
I'm not really sure that I am as knowledgeable in this area as the other speakers to sort of offer anything of much help, other than just to say I'm pretty sure, in fact I'm 100% sure everybody has felt some degree of harm through some aspect of themselves that is or has been marginalized, if you like, and all of our actions have the potential to create something positive that is closer to what we want, or to take us further away. So it's about you know, thinking about what we want that future to look like. And, you know, the word inclusion is very, very powerful, because it doesn't imply that there is any one group that is dominant. It implies very much a collaborative working together. And I think the reality that there has been considerable harm exists, and it, you know, some people will probably never get over that. It needs to be acknowledged. But I think we also need to sort of, again, gently help focus people on what it is that we want the future to look like.
Cool, thank you for that. Yeah, and these are all great learning journeys. And I think, you know, a lot of what everyone has said today is just be gentle, you know, be gentle with one another, be gentle with yourself, be gentle with each other while we go on this journey. It's not about chopping each other down, but coming to a place of sharedness and shared understanding, and also from a place of care. So yeah, thank you all so much for your whakaaro. I just wanted to open up to the three of you. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to this and your thoughts?
Maybe just to say that, like, just to acknowledge, I guess, that, you know, when we are on this journey and having these courageous or difficult conversations, and helping each other along the way, like all of this comes from a place of love. And I think when we remind ourselves of that, I think it's really kind of restorative, because so much of what the journey entails can feel like a fight. And like, it's not fighting because like of a hate of something, but because like we want to see something better than we have now. And I think yes, that's kind of like the idea that really brings us all together.
Neelum, did you have any final thoughts?
Not really. I really try to talk about the love and the side of it, and the restorative part of this journey as well, that Rebekah just talked about. I always like to think about the future in like around 20 or 30 years time in the future, whenever looking at stuff. And I think that's where the hope comes from, is you are reimagining a really incredible future for everyone. And that's like what I kind of like to do. It's a bit tough, and like you're really in the fight as you look at the future and you imagine a better one. Kia ora.
And I think, you know, the better future, you know, one comment that's just being made on the Facebook feed is I'm thinking a lot about othering right now and how hard it has for these conversations when we may feel like we don't belong. And I think, some of us have pointed that out today, is sometimes we don't always feel like we belong, because society here has put us in that place. But actually through this piece of document, we definitely do. But how do we all, have those shared understanding with each other, and how do we actually, again, show care for each other? So thank you all. And Andrea, did you have any final thoughts to that as well?
Only that, probably more from the psychological perspective, really, is that we, in addition to the being, gentle and that sort of thing, and focused on the future, people are fearful of what they don't know or they don't understand, and sometimes that fear can manifest itself in a way that doesn't always come across well. So I think we also need a lot of tolerance as we go through this and see people go on their own complex path to sort of get to a greater understanding that that they may not always deal with in the best possible way.
And thank you all so much for your thoughts today, and your journey, and sharing with us. It's also really nice for other people who are on this journey, but also wanting to be on this journey, to see from your own experiences and perspectives as well. So thank you all so much for today. We have more Community Voices web series coming up that we will be developing and talking about, so stay tuned, and you can follow us on our Facebook. But today I just really wanted to thank you all, Neelum, Rebekah and Andrea, for just joining us and spending some time with us. So thank you all, and I think today we'll just wrap up from here. Yeah. Oh, and one thing from Anusha, happy Diwali, everybody. Oh, and one other thing that I forgot to plug in is that tomorrow is Parihaka Day. So if you wanted to learn more, we will be putting up some posts around the significance of Parihaka, for those being on the journey around learning about the passive Māori resistance, that this day is significant too. So yeah, we'll be posting that on our Facebook feed. And ngā mihi nui, kia koutou. Thank you so much for all that's joining us today.